Following on our very interesting conversation in part one, please join us now for part two. We spoke about the growth in home education worldwide and how that has an impact on public schools in that it actually releases some of the pressure on the schools. But there is the perception that home educators are separatists and they do not want to be involved in the community. Linda, is this the case?
Not at all, not at all. And we have to presume that the objection is rooted in ignorance. So we will have mercy on that objection. Not at all. The fact is, and as we've all experienced as homeschoolers, our children, first of all, are in the real world every day, every moment of the day. They, more than children in school who are confined to classroom of age-related children and are dictated to by the bell, and yeah, which is a very artificial, unnatural environment actually. But as we all, as we have experienced, our children are age integrated. They are comfortable with people of all ages, people of all status, people of all spheres. In the real world, living is learning, schooling is living. It's really, there's no distinction really between real life, real world and education according to most of our understandings. So just by mere virtue of being at home and in a natural environment, loving environment, and the freedom to move around, to interact with other groups, to interact with society, with the community, to freely pursue sports, to freely pursue any extramural activities, endless field trips, as we've all enjoyed. Yeah, that it makes for a very well-adjusted whole individual, the whole personality, as the definition says, of the right to education. The whole personality is being developed, and from that springs very healthy interaction with all spheres of the community. And so on the contrary, and I do recall Brian Ray's research back in 2009. He published a very, very comprehensive paper on the benefits of homeschooling and the stats involving homeschoolers in all spheres of society. And one of the advantages that homeschoolers had above their public school peers were that they were actually politically more tolerant than public school children, and I think purely because they are free to explore in the safety of their homes all the ideological varieties and options that are available within the safe environment of a guiding parent who obviously wants to impart his or her values to the children, but they are free to explore all of those. Whereas in institutionalized schooling, we've seen that there's a supposed freedom of expression and an encouragement to think critically, but it's still within a limited framework. Often, a framework within a certain philosophical bias and tenet. So there is a freedom to homeschooling that allows children to be more tolerant, more interactive, more comfortable with all spheres, all races, all socioeconomic spheres. So yeah, there's just that is a myth, but I believe rooted in ignorance for the most. Yeah. I don't know if you want to.
So just the example of our children, both of them engaged in water sports throughout their homeschooling careers. Is that the right word? So and they both became SA champs in kite surfing, and the liberty that the homeschooling environment brought us, the flexibility, you know, it's something that money can't buy. I wouldn't exchange it for anything. You know, we really became great buddies while pursuing their education and their sports. My son now works as an engineer for BMW, and he does not have matric exemption or a matric certificate. And that's a long story, which we're not going to share, and we don't promote the route that we took. It was a bit of a maverick route. I'm a bit of a maverick, so we won't promote it, but it worked for us. My daughter, she is still a professional kite surfer, very well sponsored, and also is now engaged in an avocado restaurant business in the States. So, and honestly, you can look at us. We are not geniuses. We didn't have all the tools when we embarked, but we created an environment where they absolutely enjoyed accumulating information, because they didn't have to write tests about it. It was spontaneous reading and gathering of information, pursuing projects, pursuing what they love. And we started engaging a bit formal from grade 10, realizing that, you know, there has to be a bit of a more formal structure. And yeah, so the advantages, you know, I think sometimes, you know, there's a lack in vocabulary to express the advantages. So most certainly, it is going to be difficult to convey the advantages to its full extent to a bureaucracy or to an institution that is kept in a certain way of education. But yeah, we have to just continue with platforms like this to promote home education, and we have to promote the benefits more than what we criticize the counter options. I think it's very important that we focus on what we can offer society, what we can offer the education system, as Bouwe alluded to earlier, and just drive that as opposed to be critical or even arrogant about your own status. I think it's very important. I think a lot of home educators went through a phase where you know there's a bit of an arrogance there, and I think in many ways we've dealt with it. But yeah, that we can offer society quality students that can contribute to the economy and to society at large. Yeah.
Yes. I know from my experience that home educating parents are very willing to share their experience and to assist and give help amongst each other, but also then in the broader community. Bouwe, you mentioned earlier about the number of poor students who are often sent to dysfunctional schools. How does home education benefit them? Can they slot into this network?
Well, home education to start off is accessible to rich and poor. And you can make home education as expensive as you want. So you can buy an expensive curriculum and we'd use all kinds of fantastic resources. But if you want to do it on a shoestring budget, you can also do that. You can make use of second-hand material. The internet is full of free resources. And you can go to the public library to get access to resources. So that makes home education accessible for rich and poor. I've recently had a discussion with somebody that developed a platform with which you can deliver video lessons over a cell phone using very little bandwidth, because some of these platforms on which you can get the best teachers giving you a lesson about something, or based on YouTube. But somebody in a rural area that buys 50 rands airtime per month hasn't got access to that. And there's new technology that can overcome those things. So I think that makes home education or small schools a viable option also for rural communities.
Yes, another thing I've noticed is many school students use tutors for maths and science, but home educating students need them as well. And many have started to schedule lessons for the mornings when home educated learners can attend. And there are sport coaches who've started programs in the morning. So would you say that home education also benefits the economy?
Yeah, it certainly benefits. But in those dysfunctional schools, there are also frustrated teachers that look for other opportunities. And I often get contacted by those teachers that want to get out of the school system, and they see the home education market as a place where they can generate an income utilizing their skills there. So yes, most certainly it's creating new markets. With lots of small businesses develop curriculums, so it creates a new economy. Just go visit a expo and see all those exhibitors there. Those are all businesses that make an income out of home education. The only difference between that and the public school system is the home education market is a free market, where the public school market is a monopoly. And you must choose where you want to buy your education.
True. Johan and Linda, what would you say was the biggest benefit for you as a family? You mentioned your children's sport activities and achievements, but other than that, yeah, what was the biggest benefit you as a family had?
So many, but you say the biggest, I would almost say the relationship we could enjoy, the bond with your children in an uninterrupted environment. In other words, you don't have to compete with 20 peers with whom they would otherwise have spent most of their waking hours. And also the say you have in the matter, the influence you can have in your children's life without having to compete with teachers or headmasters, or that it was wonderfully liberating, yeah, to be in a spontaneous, loving, nurturing environment with our children and establish lifelong friendships with them and a bond with them, which I think gets lost in the public school arena. A lot of it, certainly not in all cases, but yeah, we thoroughly enjoyed that. The flexibility, it's really not either or. There are many first prizes in terms of benefits. So the flexibility, the spontaneity, learning through living, and not being bound by schedules and times and early morning rushing to school, which, by the way, I saw there was a research paper done on students having to get up early for school. And it was an academic abstract, very thorough paper that was done on the mental and emotional and physical detriment to children's health because of the early morning rush to school. Very interesting. I can provide you with some of the links if someone is interested. But that was the one thing, and also the elimination of stresses, of exam stresses and homework, and having the freedom to live without being dictated to. And that was another research project. Actually, Harvard University did research about 3 years ago, 2016, on the effects of exams and standardized testing, but exams specifically on children's health, psychologically, emotionally, mental, physically as well. And the results are disconcerting. It's really alarming. Over more than 80% of the students complained of severe physical and mental panic attacks, anxiety, symptoms during those exam seasons. So just the absolute liberty and freedom, to live the way that your family feels convicted to live.
I've got just one example that I want to use. I remember we were living on a wine estate during the early years of their homeschooling, and I arrived home the one morning, and they were in the room, and they were all in tears, and I said, "What's going on?" And they said, "Yeah, we're struggling with this maths test." And I said, "That's it, no more tests, no more exams." And there weren't literally no more exams. There were obviously we had brilliant resources that Bouwe alluded to, and obviously there are questions and answers, at the back of every chapter, and so obviously that's what they did. And so my son's first formal exam was an admission exam for physics and maths that he had to write to get entry into UNISA. And so it was the first time he had to walk into a classroom and sit down, and the stopwatch started rolling. And I'm not going to give the actual result, but he did excellently in physics, and it was his first ever exam at the age of 21. After having completed a online business diploma as well, but that was a more informal environment. You write your exams online. So we know that the top-rated country, Norway, their model is Finland. Sorry, is based on exactly that. They don't write exams until the age of 16, when you can start formalizing the education, and by that time you have solidified their love for learning, for reading, and you've also solidified a general direction, a preferred direction for the individual. So for me, if I look back, for me personally, I mean, Linda spoke a lot about, but just that we managed to, I almost want to say, duck the system and allowed our children to be educated in a free environment, and that they enjoyed learning. That, to me, that benefit where you establish a love for learning within the child and the individual. Wow! If I think of my school days, I hated school. So we could offer them that. The thought in hindsight now that we could offer them that, and they don't even know what it means to be, locked in a cage in many ways, and write exams and the stresses, and all of that. We managed to spare them that, and I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, and if I may add, we spoke about the value of students and homeschool children to society, and whether they are in fact disengaged, or how efficient do they function in society. We also, part of the research we did in 2014 when we spent time at the DBE, was the admissions requirements of the Ivy League universities in America. And that includes Stanford, Harvard, MIT, Lawrence University. Okay, not an Ivy League, but many of those universities actually welcome homeschoolers with open arms, for the very reason of the value they can add to the university and ultimately to society. And I've actually got the one admissions, an example of one of the admissions pages here. It says, Yeah, Lawrence University says, Lawrence University welcomes applications from homeschooled students who often find themselves particularly well suited to take advantage of the high degree of challenge through individualized coursework. And then they conclude with saying, we recognize the important contributions made by homeschoolers, both inside and outside the classroom, and we make a deliberate effort to accommodate the special circumstances of homeschoolers during the admissions process. And many of these, Stanford and Harvard, don't even necessarily, they are quite content and with a portfolio application. In other words, with an holistic application for admission, as opposed to formal matric equivalents, because they recognize the holistic approach of so many homeschoolers and what they can add to the institution. So that, many such examples of the benefits of homeschooling.
Great. That's such a positive note to end this conversation with. I thank you for your time, Johan, Linda, Bouwe. Yes, and I think that we might need another session in the future. So yeah, this was really enjoyable. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. And to all our homeschoolers, go for it.